University of Lagos, where he also retired, and I think as an emeritus professor and lived all his life. Among his collections are poems, collected poems simply titled Poems in 1961, A Reed in the Tide in 1965, A Decade of Tongues in 1981. Among his drama texts are The Rafts in 1964, The Epic Drama of Sidi in 1966, The Bulls, 1981, The Wives' Revolt, 1991. He also wrote prose work. The first is The Example of Shakespeare, simply titled The Example of Shakespeare. It was published in 1970, and this is a collection of his essays. He also worked as a journalist, as an editor, so his essays, both literary and academic, they are collected under that title. And then he also stayed in the US, I think for a couple of years, and out of that stay was a travelogue called America, Their America, a really controversial travelogue. I don't need to say that he had numerous awards, recognition, honors, both in the university and outside the university. We are going to discuss mostly about his work, his contribution to Africa. We can safely say that he is one of those who set the foundation for what African literature. So that foundational African writing. Let me start with Okoro.
Okay, thank you. At first I was worried. You can't discuss an institution in 30 minutes. JP is an institution. Where do you even start? Do you start with his drama or do you start with his poetry? I think he published till around 2011. So he has a very prolific publishing history, if I am correct. I think he has publications. So that we do save our time, showing what to remain actually JP. You start with JP, what to remain actually showing. You start with actually what to remain JP and showing. As Achebe took on prose and essay writing, I hope we all know that he has a collection of poetry. He tried once, won an award, and left it. I think he knew where his audience lie better. We have Shoyinka, who is better suited as a dramatist, incidentally from my perspective. The quintessential thespian. conviction is because he's you don't really know whether it is draft writings are influenced. Let me put it this way. Whether he's rhythmical, it is his context. When I mean context, I'm talking about where he was born. He's an German. I think it's Ason or something like that. So, JP, anything he writes carefully, I've gone through most of his poems and I can't start quoting them by heart. But anything he writes, look at it carefully. There's always a peppering of flora and fauna that have something to do with the riverine. Is that why he mentions daddy long legs, or he mentions mangrove swamps? Even when he doesn't mention the flora and fauna specifically, he applies them metacritically. Look at Ecuador. His classic Ecuador, running splash of rust and gold. The running alone is enough. For those of us in the north who are more attuned to Sahel savannas, I don't think running will come to your mind easily. But for somebody who lives where eddies ebb, tides flow back and forth, I think running naturally comes to his mind. And imagine where he applies running to a mixture of rusting and golden zincs, flung and scattered among the 7 hills, the sun, describing Ecuador. He had to apply that semi-aquatic context to the rhythm, to the imagic rhythm of his mind. Not necessarily the morphemes of rhythm or the rhythms of morpheme of the words of the diction, but even to his thought processes. You see that rhythm of somebody who grew up in the river. In Anambra State here, we have a joke. People from the river, we call them holy people, people who reside near the river. That's their life, it flows. If there is joy, they flow with joy. If there is sadness, they flow with sadness. But for us who live upland, I think we are tight-fisted and more hard-hearted because we don't understand why things should flow. So let us call that the major thing we should know that which we seem not to see. Let's forget about the controversies of Hopkins and Eliot, the influences, and maybe the controversies of he being too individualistic and not too empathetic to other people's plight, like some critics mentioned in his casualties. That was where it came up most. But let us remember, he's a water person, and there's always ecology and eco-criticism in all his works. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Let me invite Professor Oga Okuyade to come over and take his seat.
Oga.
Double Oga. Okay, I turn to Professor Tracy. You are a scholar of theatre arts, and for some of us, Jeremy Clark was also a master playwright, especially with his early, even though there are criticisms about his work being too dependent on Greek or classical work. What would you say is the contribution of J.P. Clark to theatre arts?
Talking about the master dramatist, J.P. Clark. I'm not really going to discuss his dramatic works per se, because so many anthologies have been written on his works. You go through his dramaturgy, you notice that J.P. Clark, I don't want to go into that argument whether it's Greek or African, but you notice that he is an African man to the core. You see his works and you just perceive African worldview. Look at his Osidi saga. And So I'm really not going to part of his dramatic in his most current work, 1991, his most current dramatic piece. There's something peculiar about this work. J.P. Clark, if you look at his older works, you see this stronghold of patriarchy in those works. And so in 1991, obviously, he looked at it and said, well, everybody is going feminist. We need to pacify these women. So why don't I think outside the box and think inside their own box, the current generation, and write something that will be appealing to them, something that will talk about women being uplifted, being empowered, being less marginalized and all that. And he wrote The Wives' Revolt. But then, being the J.P. Clark that he was, and he is, because his work is alive, you find out that it was difficult for him to detach from patriarchy, to detach from those patriarchal strongholds. And so we now see this feminism with strong masculinity in it. So that it's just like a man who has been brought up in the village, who doesn't really understand what I love you means. You are now asking him to say I love you. You know how it will sound. He now once again, maybe go there back. Yeah. I love you now, and all that, pushing it down her throat. J.P. Clark was trying to talk about women empowerment, but patriarchy did not allow him to do that. What he did was in that play, in The Wives' Revolt, of course, wives revolted and said, the oil companies pay you, the men you share the money, and you don't give us. You catch our goats and you eat, you don't give us. You do so many things, and yet we are the ones running the home, doing everything. So what we are going to do, the women had a meeting and said, we'll run away. We just leave the house for you. You take care of the children. You carry them on your back. Put them to sleep. Cook food. Pound yam. Pound everything. Cook. Give your children. Take care of yourself. We are leaving the house for you so that you know. Let's see. Take care of yourself. And the men began to do that. And the women left. Now, of course, they found it very low. We want our women back from the women so that they will have a breath of fresh air. All these shackles, traditional shackles and obnoxious cultural practices and all that. That's the feeling you have. But at the end of the day, that's really not what happens. Because at the end of the day, the men now had a meeting and said, okay, we'll start sharing things to them. We'll start giving them some part of everything. Let's bring them back. We need them. We cannot go on without them. But the question is, did J.P. Clark allow those women to go back gallantly? Did he allow them to go back to show we won the battle? Because if they had gone back to say, to show we won the battle, it would have been a plus for women empowerment. We would have looked at it like, okay, he wrote this drama because he wants to follow the trend of African feminist writers that are talking about women empowerment within the African patriarchal stronghold. But no, he did not. That masculinity, that J.P. Clarkness that is seen in the Osiris saga still came up. The women now contacted an infection from the local prostitute when they went to the local toilet, the pit toilet. And the women now said, we must all go back. It was like a curse to them. It became a curse. And so they now had to go back to be cleansed. So they went back in shame. Even after the men had taken a decision to do what the women said, the women still had to go back in shame. So you see what I'm saying is that, well, he thought he was taken after the gospel because he is a strong, you see it in his Hosanna saga, this strong patriarchal presence in his place still came to bear in his purported, feminist drama. So that when you are looking at that drama, you can actually simply grade it to the rest. It's really not a feminist drama. It's not all about women empowerment. It's all about putting women in their places. And so we see a man who is multi-talented in his in creating his dramatic pieces and upholding what makes him him. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. For that very brief critique of at the wives' revolt. Professor Chumabe, as children, in those days, in secondary stream-side exchange, the kind of poems that will be regarded as bestsellers because they will be studied everywhere. Looking back to your own age when you were in secondary school, when did you first encounter Jenny Clark and what was the impression of you?
Thank you very much. When we were young, we used to play a game. Only danger. Only danger. I don't know if anybody understands. My parents didn't. And Korea is a character in big glasses, and you know who Korea is. And indeed, Korea is danger. Korea is danger. So, J.P. Clark is one Nigerian writer that is attuned to the nuances and cadences of his contemporary society. Clark is a true Ijaw man. He is an Ijaw man to the core. And he is so proud of that his heritage. He is imbued with all the virtues and all the vices of the Ijaw man. And he has no apologies. He will tell you that Ijaw people are headhunters. He does not have any rough was about telling you that it's people's land. It doesn't really mean it. That was why when the chieftaincy of the town got to Philip told them there is nobody to be king in his family. He is the second son. Temukedeke is the fourth son. He cannot rule. That the kings are made again. So every year again, and nobody wants the death to remain only in his family. Clark looked at human foibles. He looked at human flaws. But there is something very peculiar about him. His prototypes are so true to life that you can see them in the next person beside you. Is it self of Pemgere? Is it the pride of Ozidi? Is it the wickedness of the four chiefs? Is it the bravery of Ozidi? Everybody wants to avenge. And that spirit of revenge is dominant in the human nature. So, Clark is a true leader. That's all we can say. And he brought to bear, he brought to the fore the culture of the Ijaw people in every of his writing. He did not hide. He did not sort of try to camouflage. We are very good people. He will tell you, even in his call for oil, he will tell you that the Ijaw man cannot be subsumed. Thank you very much.
Jeffrey Clark was noted for being so close to his immediate society, to his immediate community. And that is why most of the time he would go back to his homeland. I think he's from Kiago. And he has he's always there. Most of the people want to write about, who want to research into his poetry or play. When they approached him, he had this habit of taking them. He usually stayed in Lagos, and he would bring them down to his place and allow them to study him in his natural environment. And there is, a literary biography of his written by Femi Oshobson, which has to do with Oshobson traveling with him to Yagodo, and it is presented in form of a dialogue. Let me go to Professor Kuyade, who is from the same state as Jeffrey Clark, and who is been researching in the area of eco-criticism, and nature and environment. What would you say today? Those of us in eco-criticism, we begin our argument. We begin our argument by saying that African I think you mentioned it earlier in your talk that African writers had been quite sensitive to their environment in the sense of being eco-sensitive ever before whatever we call eco-criticism came. What would you say is the contribution of Jeffrey Clark's work to the discourse of eco-criticism today? Or how would you regard his work as a source of eco-critical discourse?
Thank you very much. I actually took off. The intention was to return when this session will be over. Unfortunately, I am trapped right in the middle of it. Yeah, without a doubt, J.P. Clark is one writer who, over time, has demonstrated with convincing clarity that nature is fundamental in the image making process of the African writing. If you look at Clark's art, drama. You notice that nature is the context of the imagery. And then from the Western canon to the African one, you will notice this close affinity with nature, environment, and space. If you look at Hadi, you will notice Hadi in virtually every novel he has written, that closeness what he knows. Europe. Dickens equally does that. And then J.P. Clark, for him, nature is not just like I said earlier. It's not just the context of his art or the source of his imagery, but it's like a map. To understand J.P. Clark, you need to understand what his imagination of the Niger Delta. Somehow, virtually everything he has written, somehow he manages to inscribe and insert the Niger Delta. And you will notice the idea of fluid, water, in everything he writes. And sometimes the context of the poetry, or the poem, or the play may not be the riverine, but somehow inserts it. A good example is Ibadan. Ibadan is set in the west, but the poem is short, direct and pass. But you notice splash, splash, splash. It is only fluid. And then also, his last two poetry collections, Once Again a Child, and then The Remains of the Tide or so. These two collections, they have these autobiographical slants. Usually, when we talk about autobiography, we talk about narratives. But J.P. Clark may not be the first person who has been able to do that. I think Shoyinka did that. Oshunari did that in Eye of the Earth. That collection is very autobiographical. And then he takes you back to his birthplace. Not only to familiarize his readers about Kiago and the Niger Delta, but to understand the fact that everything about this place, the existence of these people is dependent on water, on the river. It's like their life force. A good example is the poem with the title Night Winds. So eventually, when we talk about environmentalism and African literature, we are always tempted not to look at J.P. Clark. Writers like Tano Jaide attract our attention because of the radical impulse with which he creates the tensions in the Niger Delta. But we must note that J.P. Clark, and of course, Gabriel Clark to some extent, over time, have been able to actually inscribe the Niger Delta in the map of world literature. Time's up. Somehow, they managed to stop me when I am warming up. So the second ladies and gentlemen, in order to make our time, the point here is this, that we must always remember that J.P. Clark is at the center, is at the core of literature and environmentalism in Africa. All we do sometimes, we do not need to look at the combative temper of the art. Just like it's the Nigerian poet Tobo Tekere. They actually somehow manage they managed to actually articulate the yearnings, the burden of people negotiating their existence in fluid spaces like riverine areas like the Niger Delta. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is Jerry Clark. I am going to ask a question about the social relevance of J.P. Clark, both as a person and as a writer. And I want to start by saying that J.P. Clark as a human being was known for his strong-headedness. And he was one of those who was so highly independent-minded and didn't care what you said, what you thought, or what you said about his work. And he will not mince words in stating whatever was in his mind. Whosoever goes of God. So now, J.P. Clark, if you have read Religion tribute to J.P. Clark, he mentioned that most of the things that they did as a tripartite, Soyinka, Achebe, and Clark, most of the social moves they had made or social action they had taken, one of which was their intervention in the case of Mama Basa. When Mama Basa was condemned, they went to the then dictator, General Abacha, General Babangida, to intervene on his behalf. And Soyinka said that idea was J.P. Clark's idea. And you will know J.P. Clark, sometimes he is so withdrawn that you will think that he was not forthcoming with such things. So from this point, let us talk about the social relevance of his writing as well as the relevance of African literature generally. And I return to you, Dr. Okoye. J.P. Clark as a relevant person and writer to the society. Look at him, talk about him, compare with the contemporary situation, with the kind of writers we have today. There are so many things happening and writers don't talk about them, rather we fight among ourselves. Rather than dealing with this society. So what is amiss? I want you to talk about the generational.
All right. I've always liked to fine-tune my approach. I think this has come to the classical humanistic approach to criticism. I've never really been a fan of extra criticism for its sake. The temperament of any writer affects his writings. That's the way I see it. If Achebe were not an ancestral spirit, he would not be talking a lot about ancestors and if Soyinka were not as enigmatic and mystical as he were, he would not have been writing the way, and of course, temperamental and hot-headed. He wouldn't have the guts to go take a radio station on gunpoint, alone, single-handedly. And of course, if JP were not JP, like you just said, he wouldn't have the mind to tackle the militarized 80s. Who are you? To take it upon yourself because you're a writer, you juggle words. You now he traveled straight to Abeokuta. I think Ndibe reported that thing in Guardian, that it was JP who moved from his house to Abeokuta to tell Soyinka, let's do something. And according to Ndibe's journalistic man, he said that Achebe was subpoenaed from his hideaway in Soka to also come down. So, back to what he said, he made the move physically and ideologically. And three of them came together settled the differences that have been brewing since the end of the Civil War, drank some beers, healed among themselves, and now went away to plead for his soul. And that was Mama Gatsa, the writer of The Bird That Sings for Rain. That was a very prophetic poem. The bird that sings for rain will be beaten by the rain and he was beaten by the rain he sang for. So, JP, we've already mentioned his hypocritical lineage. We have mentioned his uncoverable, if there's any word like that, patriarchy, income, and a lot of other things. But we have seen him as somebody who can move on his own to get something done. And apart from that, his hot-headedness shows itself in America, they are America. And that was a polemic, that was a vituperation. And I think he left within 8 months of the. I don't think he spent up to a year as the Pavin scholar or whatever he went there to be. He was so angry. And yeah, who was that person that never liked him? Was it Daton or Pope? Always attacking him. And like Professor E said, he never cared whatever he said about his writers. Even with Chimizu's bombardment, I don't think he even replied them. It was showing younger the legend to reply them and act an outrage. JP didn't care. He just continued what he was doing. So I think his contribution vis-a-vis what is happening now, like that triumvirate, showing that we know what he can do. I think during Abacha days, he had to be smuggled out of the country because of what he said and the things he was writing. Achebe himself had that stoic ancestral thing about refusing an award when things were burning in the country. You still see that generation still stood firm to what they believed in and not what is happening now. I know some not too savory stories of writers who claim to be persecuted so that the white man will give them awards and shelter them. It's really embarrassing. And when you find out that these people were actually lying, and you now ask yourself, if the literati are supposedly the moral fiber of society, and what is happening now around us is happening, and awards are given, and prizes are shared, and you ask yourself, have we gone back to the days of, what's that person, I think that English monarch of the 18th century, who Alexander Pope they were fighting against? Charles somebody. Charles II, yeah. Charles II, who was hiring serviceable writers to fight people who did not like him. Have we come to that? So when we look back at these people, let us not go to the militaristic attitude of somebody like Okubo, who had to take the bull by the horns and died there. We don't need to die, but we can still write as the writers we are. I think JP was one of those quiet, like you said, to the point of even making enemies from his friends because of the toll they are shooting casualties. And people were saying, why don't you have sympathy? I don't think he even tried to explain. He simply said that you should try and be where I am now. The federal government didn't like me. My people didn't like me. The Biafran secessionists did not like me. And here am I still doing what I believe is correct. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Very insightful. Yeah, Professor Motoro Izaju, you looked at it from a gender point earlier, and looking at what we just discussed about the contribution of these early African writers to society, what is your view of the present generation, especially that if you look at gender violence in our society, seems to be increasing, insecurity, all kinds of things that are happening unimaginable. Why are the writers of today not taking after people like Jerry Clark?
Okay, thank you. I think Okoye has actually said it all about Jerry Clark. A man who believed in himself, a man who expressed himself, and he wrote about his environment without apologies to anyone. I believe, incidentally, that J.P. Clark, just like that generation that we're talking about, I think it's only Soyinka that is remaining out of the three. And of course, even Olarotimi died in 2001. Writers like that who stood their ground and attempted to tell our story the way it is. I believe that J.P. Clark has actually influenced many writers. You see, when we talk about African literature now, there is no way we should not expect African literature now to be African literature then. Then they did not have iPhones. Then they did not have the kind of interaction that we have today and the kind of proliferation that we have today and the kind of unthinkable crimes that occur today. But in their days, there were other unthinkable crimes that occurred, that were synonymous with the day. So I believe that African writers, there are many committed African writers, there are many committed Nigerian writers who are actually presenting the contemporary society the way it is, presenting contemporary problems the way it is. We should not get deterred by the fact that there are some fair writers, there are some who are not really, who are just sidling up to the government. There are some who just write for the monetary gains. There are some who will just want to be praise singers. But aside all that, there are committed African writers. And these committed African writers who are, people, many are here, Nigerian writers, writing from the happenings in our environment. Because Soyinka said that the writer does not write in a vacuum, that he writes from the experiences around him, from his environment, the happenings in his environment, that he writes by putting those together. So I believe that these things, they are being reflected, but the issue may not even be, are we writing about them? The issue may be, are we reading about them? Are people reading? Because even as we are here now, we're all pressing our phones. So you can imagine if my generation can press their phones. I graduated in the 80s. If my generation can press their phones, you can imagine what is happening to the present generation. And so, because people are not reading, they do not know that those issues are being reflected. Because there are so many other influences. What J.P. Clark tried to achieve was achievable because people, the only source of, knowledge, information, education, entertainment then were novels, plays, poems. And so people devoted time and we read. But now, hardly do people read. So people are not reading. So I believe that African writers are living up to their calling. There are people who are writing, just like with the fervency that J.P. Clark did, but we may have to address some other issues. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I am going to ask Professor Okada Okuyade a question, and then I will throw it to the audience if you have any question or contribution to make, and then we close. Professor Okuyade, I want you to talk about J.P. Clark's view his position was critically reflected upon, and younger poets then, like Ode Ofimo, wrote the poet Life, and J.P. Clark sued him for directly referring to him was he had to sue a younger poet because he felt that the poet was referring to him, was maligning him in his writing. Do you think, and J.P. Clark never apologized to anybody about his view on the Civil War, even though many thought that he shouldn't have taken that view. The best he did was to write casualties as a response. What do you think of that? Thank you.
J.P. Clark as a writer, sometimes, not sometimes, I think almost all the time, he manages to negotiate his way between the private, personal position and the universal. Then you will notice that escapist temper in the casualty. Like, as if he's distancing the context of the war. And as a writer, although critics, especially Odimaduako, was really critical of his position on the war, especially the collection of casualties. But I think what people like did, as I said earlier, he manages to negotiate his way between the private, personal and the universal. And then there's this, he takes that centrist position. I am an observer, most especially not because he's a Niger Deltan, because he makes it very explicit that we are all victims. Whether you are at the heart of the theater of the war, you are abroad, you are at home, you lost a limb, you lost a loved one, we are all casualties. But you will notice that authorial distancing. He refuses to take a position. And I think that's what has attracted every time that serious criticism on that collection. Again, as a writer, what you do is you try as much as possible to observe situations from a distance, and then you explore that experience into a creative act. When you begin to take a position as a writer, your art or literature becomes political. Because first and foremost, the writer is a human being, just like a person. It's a human being. And there's a tendency to identify with the position. But once you identify with the position, it becomes politics. It's no longer art. So most importantly, there must be authorial distancing, so that you can easily recreate the experience, so that anybody who reads what has been created will come to understand the fact that the writer's position is supposed to be centrist. And when you go into a position, you take a place. When you write, it's politics. And I think that is one reason. That's one reason why most criticism on J.P. Clark's portrait of the war are a little bit hard and harsh. Sometimes you even think the man is not a Nigerian. Like he didn't see the war. But he was at home while the war lingered. So I think critics who have over time taking him out on his refusal to commit, I think it's because of the central position he took in the war. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we now open the floor, as it were. Let me start with you because I saw your hand first. Okay, so let me give you numbers so that we don't. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then you went. Did you? Okay, 10. Please, you can see you are many. Very quick. Just quick. You can mention your name. Okay. Can we use the 2 mic at the same time?
I am pharmacist Handel Balogati from Latvia and Saral State. Truly, I am intrigued by this lecture on J.P. Clark because I read America the America. I also read his poems like Casualties, Ibadan, Abiku, and so on. Truly, those who wrote the Civil War have been attacked from the inside, but he has not been attacked. Just as I have said, he has maintained artistic distance. You know, the same thing with Chukwemeka Ike, late Chukwemeka Ike. He was looking for Biafra. He is married to a Yoruba woman, and in the sunset at dawn, he was talking about a Hausa girl, Fatima, married to a Igbo, and she was caught in the war. And as I said, he tried to change, instead of a Yoruba woman, he changed to Hausa woman. Truly, we really marvel that people who maintain artistic distance. Like, if you read Alexander Madego, you know, he was writing, when he was report started, he was written Biafra as story victims, and then portraying Nigerians as enemy. From a military point of view, he's right. Anybody you take arms against is an enemy. He was a general in the Biafran army. He was a classmate to Yakubu Gowon, you know, and he spoke well about Yakubu Gowon. Truly,
your time is.
Thank you. Yes. Truly, J.P. Clark was praised for maintaining centuries position or artistic distance. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your contribution. Number 2.
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Jude Susan Akwo. I am from the Cardinal chapter. And mine is, first of all, I don't know whether it was deliberate that they put all the female panelists on one side and the male panelists on the other side, which is why I want to take Professor on, you know, on his own issue of that J.P. Clark was not necessarily, you know, he was a little bit chauvinist. He was actually pro-feminism on the outside, but chauvinist on the inside. For me, I think that, I mean, equality is a vision. We never really get there, as far as I know. I think J.P. Clark, sorry, with due respect to you, man, I think J.P. Clark has done his bid as much as possible to remove women from the clogs of that patriarchal society that we're in. We only do our best to want to aspire to get to that level, but as far in my own personal opinion, equality is a vision. We never really get there. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your contribution. Number 3. Number 3, yes.
Thank you. The microphone is not working, so why don't we use that? No, but you can hear me. Yeah. So why do I have to use a microphone? Go on. Thank you. I want to say this. I don't know how many of you who know this side of J.P. Clark. J.P. Clark reads every art column in all the newspapers on daily basis. If you have gone to Kiabodo, his entire house is, the parlor is a library, up to the roof. And I didn't know that he read that much until somebody who didn't have my phone number put a call across to me. There was a review by one former commissioner in Eboy about the Golden Jubilee book on solo performing arts. I didn't know that he read it and was looking for a copy of the book. He called the publisher because he didn't have my number. And the publisher said that I warned him not to sell it and that I would put him in jail if he sells it because it took almost 3-point-something million from me. So J.P. Clark said, but that is right, that is right, give me his number then. And J.P. Clark called me and introduced himself. I said, now, why didn't you put it in bookshops? I said, because the bookshops don't treat me the way I treat the supermarket people when I go to buy Bonvita. That when I go to buy Bonvita, I take the Bonvita and buy and I pay for the Bonvita. Yes. But when the bookshops want to buy my book, they want to take one carton. When they finish selling, then they will pay me. So he said sometimes they don't pay me. So J.P. Clark laughed and said, okay, how do I get my copy? And I told him, tell me the closest event that will bring you from, I thought it was in Lagos, to Bayelsa, and I will come there. Or to Niger Delta. I mean, Cameroon. He told me, well, that they're planning the burial of Gabriel Okara, and that he wants 2 copies for himself and his wife. And I will tell you honestly, J.P. Clark did not allow the burial of Gabriel Okara in the hands of Anna Bayelsa. While Anna Bayelsa was making their own arrangement and they gave them money to arrange hotel for their members, J.P. Clark was talking with the governor of Bayelsa and making an arrangement for his own contingent of very important personalities like Alagwa and all of them, who stayed at the government house. I wasn't at the government house, but the Anna Bayelsa man called me and J.P. Clark said I should give him my particulars that he has booked a room for me. And I took the books to him and was invited to have lunch in the governor's lodge with all the important. But the point I'm making, the important point is not my personal contact. I want to know how many of us that are Chebe or Shoyinka as large as they are in their lifetime, without knowing them, without their making effort to come to them. I put a form to them. I think any man who can do that is doing a lot that we don't know about. I think, and the way I see J.P. Clark is that he's an undercurrent person. He's doing so much because he is on the personal level. Many of us think that he's withdrawn. After that very encounter with him, I changed the whole notion of his being withdrawn. Thank you. I rest my case.
Thank you for your contribution. Number 4.
Thank you. I think just stay there. Just stay. Switch your mic not working. Switch it. Actually, I would have used my voice like my friend Greg. But for us artists, this hall is not too large for us to entertain. Thank you very much. But I like to take on my female professors. Okay, sorry about my name is Akos Adesi, Dr. Akos Adesi. I'm from Anna Bayelsa. Thank you. I like to take on my 2 female professors. Should I speak?
It's working.
Hello.
Use his voice.
I should release my voice. Yes, my 2 female professors who felt that Clark was not feminine enough or not take the feminine angle to it. And she gave the example of was it the wives revolt. I think she should take a second look at the wives revolt. You know, when you look at the wives revolt, what happened in the end? After they had taken walk out of town, they came back victorious. Was that infection which they had from the prostitute. Now, having come back, you should look at.
Just give us your voice. Just give us your voice.
I should give my voice.
Yes.
Please be brief. Yes, I will be brief, very brief. So, when you look at the declamation of the town crier, Okoro, you discover that the women won because at the end of the day, the men did not have it all to themselves. Rather, it became it was shared among the community. They thought that an hospital should be built and a couple of other things, which was for the benefit of the entire community. So the women succeeded. Now that is one angle, and she also said that what's it called now? The wives' revolt was Clark's last play. That's not quite true. After the wives' revolt, Clark went on to write All for Oil, and then his latest piece of work was The Three Sisters. Now, if you read The Three Sisters, the title play itself is a feminine work. Sister who has been attacked, who had been malign by a kind of a patriarchal society, and then the woman, her sister, coming to save her, bail her out of that problem. When you look at it, that itself is a feminine angle to it. And then finally, I will take on that. Some critics believe that Ozidi is not as masculine as you thought, because the live wire, the strength behind Ozidi is Oriame. Oriame, the witch. Were it not for Oriame, Ozidi would not have avenged on his father. So when you look at it from that point of view, you will see that Clark was as feminine as some other person could.
Thank you so much for your contribution. Number 5.
Who is number 5?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that one working?
Hello, gentlemen. Hello.
Yeah, that one.
Yes.
Hello.
You're hearing me? I'm really very impressed. We are talking of what others go.
Your name,
Are
sir?
you hearing me now?
Please, sir.
You're not hearing me, okay?
Use the mic, please.
Use it. Okay. I said I'm so impressed with the arrangement done so that some professors will talk to us about some books that have been written by people that presented something. I am impressed. What I'm trying to say here is that we are talking of people who have written. We are writers. How do we talk about our own writing? We find it very difficult. As one of the professors mentioned the fact that people are not reading these days. Is it not true? People are not reading. If they are not reading, why are we writing? Why are we writing? What I'm trying to say is that Anna should now work on something. Sorry, President, I talked to you about it. Let us find a means of making our books to be read. Even if it means government pay us and then we write and share it free to people so that still they are not buying. You know, so that is another way. Because what are we doing? My country does that. Now,
Yes.
you see, I myself, I'm Jonathan Bambon from Taraba, Anna.
Belgium.
I write a lot, and my writings are just striking lessons. They are all striking lessons. If you see my books being displayed here, they are striking lessons. But how do you get that striking lesson if you can't buy the book? And I cannot give it free, because if I give it free, I cannot publish the others. So what do we do now? One of my books, Arabians, please don't tell them anything. One of my books is asking you, are you awake right now? Are you awake? Are you sure you are awake? If you are awake, tell me why you think you are awake. You can never give an answer to this. You don't know whether you are awake or you are asleep and you are dreaming. Because
When you are dreaming, it is real to you because if you are paid salary in dreams, you will pick, you will collect it. Yes, if you know that it is just a dream, will you collect it? You collect it because you think it is real. People drive cars in dreams. People build houses in dreams. And
thank you very much, sir.
It is only okay. So 1 minute. If you waste me time, it is only when you wake up that you start telling the dreams that you are seeing. Is that not true? Yes. How do you know whether we are only all dreaming now? So that when we wake up, we say we came for Anna meeting. So you can never differentiate that. My book, Driven into Reality. Just read that one and see.
Thank you very much, sir.
Hello, good evening, Anambra. Hello, Anambra. Hello. Can online participants have some access or space to make comment, please?
Of making it possible for me to meet Professor Tracy Uto. We are talking of women. Apart from the women, she's another visible female playwright. I think you wrote Echoes of Our Times. She has several plays in the market, which I was pretty
Not Echoes.
Not Echoes.
But she has several plays. My question is, she talked about the feminism of J.P. Clark, wife of God. A latter-day feminist, which J.P. Clark is, like Achebe, who was a patriarch because of the culture of the Igbo tribe. Now, Achebe also tried to turn feminist in his last novel, The Antics of the Savannah, in the portrayal of character Beatrice. My question to Professor Tracy, could you also thought the portrayal of the character of Beatrice in Achebe's Antics of the Savannah? Secondly, I have another question for the keynote speaker. He talked about J.P. Clark not keeping distance from his subject. That is not taking side. Of course, in the issue of civil war, many of us know that the average Niger Delta indigenous will not support civil war because they are afraid of domination from the Igbos. They felt safer in the Federation of Nigeria than Biafra. So it is understandable that J.P. Clark was sitting on the fence without taking position. But can we actually say that he always sat on the fence? No. If we look at the Niger Delta question, especially the environmental degradation, J.P. Clark took positions, all for oil. If you see oil for oil, he talk about the harm done to his own area. Even if it may not be the major theme in wife's revolt, but we still see the subject of oil pollution in the Niger Delta. Can we now say that J.P. Clark stood on the fence in certain areas, which his people also stood in the fence, but takes positions in areas that affect his people? Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Will you respond to that before we move on? Yes. Okay. The centrist, the centrist position you said is very, very interesting because he was saying that it is only where you live that you match. He has the choice to do so. When you mentioned, I think somebody mentioned something about who married a Yoruba. Then in his fiction, they turned the character to Hausa, right? One of Okibo who died, he married a northern lady. But he still took a position. You understand? So I think position and centrism depends on what you call central to you.
So when it comes to Niger Delta pollution and legal criticism, he takes his own position. But when he looks at things that have a broader something, he weighs them carefully and pitches his tent. Because it is where you live that you match.
Well, let me briefly say that for me, position quickly.
They can still.
Yes.
Who is trouble? Is it?
My name is Dr. Destiny of the University of Africa, Florida, and my contribution is actually so close to what he said. One professor talked about the reading culture. Maybe for the mainly of books. Now, as contemporary writers, I think we should look out for where our audience are. They are in the social media, they are in the social world. So we need to tinker around that and see how we can get our creative works into the social media space. Even the financial aspect, we could also work it out and see that we get the reward back in that form, because 90% of our reading audience, they are not the traditional bookish type again. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Number 8.
My name is Adamu Adi Muhammad from Tarawa, and my question goes to Moni, Mr. Tracy. I want to say that I like the way you categorize works as patriarchal feminist. I don't know whether it is your coinage or the what has been there, but I think it's great. I'm sorry to say that I am not all that pro-feminist, but I don't castigate. Mommy, I have a question that I need you to answer. And the question goes that, Mommy, if feminism is a political consciousness meant to reposition a woman in the society to, get the same right as a man, I believe that such consciousness, such enlightenment should not be done in isolation with our socio-cultural non-values. And in your second analysis, you said that Wole Soyinka, you quoted Wole Soyinka, that literature does not exist in a vacuum. Yes. It must be influenced by socio-cultural realities. Now, then, if that's the case, I want to believe that feminism in Africa should just be the way J.P. Clark projected it in the book you analyze. Give woman every right she needs, but forever she should be under a man. Any situation, any mistake that we may make to get such enlightenment role and conscientize our women, it will do more harm to our society. We just need to take a list in Europe and America. Today, marriages are broken every day. Yes. Family setups.
All right, thank you very
definitely.
Thank you very much. It's more of a comment than a question.
Let me tell you.
You are number 8, right? Number 9.
My name is what comment I had to make has already been preempted by the comment of about taking position. Because position is position. Whether you are backing A, backing B, or distancing yourself from the two positions to take a central position. And so people should not force people to take position they want them to take. Allow the equality of the right to show itself in the profession he has taken. That's what I want to say.
Thank you very much. Number 10. Okay, Mr. President. And then the last one is from Zoom. We'll take Zoom as the last one.
Please allow me not to look at the audience. I'm
Blushing.
Secondly, I think this session raise diversity. Whose position, the position he took on the Civil War is more or less, or the non-position he took, is more or less viewed as the anti-Biafra. But we are here in the heart of the Igbo land discussing this and making very useful contributions. So I would like us, yes, I know many people have been celebrating J.P. Clark. Bayelsa did it just before they started off coming to this end. I think doing it in Anambra is very symbolic. Please let us invite this culture of accepting different opinions. Whether, especially we as writers, you were born into this tribe or into that. Please, and please respect the other. That is what diversity is all about. If you create everybody, we should lead, we should show Nigeria how this Nigeria ought to be. Not for us to start taking side or to hide. I think we should be the prophet. Secondly, so I'm sorry, I'm thinking a little bit about this. Reading culture I mentioned as actually very good. I think we are going to have a sentence or two talking to government that the book policy in Nigeria is wrong. If you want good books, they are expensive. And so the bad books are, sorry, apologies, I'm not saying the books that are not being, people are not buying about. Generally, but I'm saying the good ones, they are so expensive that people cannot afford to buy. If you buy the bad one and you read, you may not want to touch the book again. Now that is why in this reset of Anna, we are thinking of engaging government. I said, why is it that Simon Heaney is an Irish poet? He won the Nobel Prize. He wrote, or his writing might have been in the same area, in the same way, manner, and whatever texture, especially poetry, of J.P. Clark. He celebrated his Irish background. If you read him, actually, lyrical, this thing or whatever, just like J.P. Clark celebrated his background like this. Why is it that Simon Heaney eventually won the Nobel Prize and J.P. Clark did not? Why? You critics, you majorly just talk about, oh, this one did whatever. What is it that we, African writers, especially from this side, we are not doing correctly to get these cases? I think you are not interrogating. Help us so that we sitting here, because I want to, as I said, we want to lead Anna towards, somebody in the nearest future begin to challenge one of our members, begin to challenge for this crisis. Help us, let us know what we are doing wrong. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That is very, very important. No, we will take the last from Zoom, sorry.
The question
from Zoom, is it written?
He will read it out.
Okay. Read it out, please. Okay, he's speaking. Take the microphone.
Okay, please just bring it to the mic.
Take the microphone.
No, I need to handle this.
Put the microphone on your speaker, on your phone speaker.
Yes, he's unmuted.
No, the Haruna Hadeja.
Yes, he's unmuted.
Yeah. Hello. Hello. Good evening.
This one.
Hello.
She's already talking. Hello,
Hello.
okay. Yeah.
Am I audible?
Go ahead, please.
Thank you. I'm Haruna Adamuhadeja from Jigawa State, and I'm representing Ghana as the secretary of the branch. One, apology for our inability to participate. It was due to some reasons. And then secondly, appreciation to the organizers and the ongoing session now. All is appreciated. Well, my comment about late Clark, well, I don't have to praise him. All has been said, but just a few comments about him. One
Can you
is
increase
on,
the volume a little bit?
one is on his book titled Casualty,
No, not you.
where he brought out some issues like violence and protest. Secondly, in his book State of the Union, he defined clearly how corruption has been institutionalized. And of course, one of the reasons came out he was making some again in his book Pride in Crimes Collection to find clearly how European colonization affected Africa. And finally, in his book titled Mandela and Other Crimes, he brought out some issues concerning so I think we need to like
You should write it. Can it type? Can it type it? Can you? Hello, are you still there?
yeah, I'm very much around.
Can you type? Can you just type the question,
It's all right.
please?
It's all right. It's okay. It's okay. Thank you.
Hello.
Yeah, I get you right.
All right. Unfortunately, we can't say that the crisis of technology
Interference.
and society. So, thank you very much. We come to the end of this. What I want you to take away is this. Jeremy Clark wrote using the idiom of his Ijaw ethnic society, and yet he was heard all over the world. That is the argument I have personally made with some of my arguments, with some of my writing on diasporization and knowledge production in Africa. We feel that until we move out of the country or until we write in the idiom of the white man, before we will be heard. But these people, like someone like J.P. Clark, wrote in his local idiom, and yet he is heard, respected, far more studied than people who are writing, who are eager to please the Western audience. J.P. Clark never wrote to please the Western audience. So that is what I do. Thank you very much.
Announcement. What time?